The moment you told someone about your transformation, you slowed it down. Not slightly, significantly. And the science explains exactly why. Think about the last time you decided to change something real. Not a small adjustment, a real change. A direction you were choosing, a version of yourself you were building. And you told someone, maybe a few people. You explained it. You posted about it. You laid out the plan. And it felt good. It felt like progress. It felt like the thing was already partially done. That feeling was the problem. That feeling was your brain releasing dopamine, the same reward chemical it releases when you actually complete a goal, in response to nothing more than the announcement of the intention. Your brain does not fully distinguish between achieving something and telling people you're going to achieve it. Both trigger reward. Both feel like progress, but only one of them is. The other one is a substitute. And every time you take the substitute, you reduce the drive to pursue the real thing. The announcement doesn't fuel the transformation. It quietly consumes it. This is not motivation. This is neuroscience. And the Stoics understood the mechanism 2,000 years before the science had a name for it. What you are about to hear is not a list of habits to build. It is a list of things to eliminate, quietly, without telling anyone, without explanation, without a timeline posted anywhere. 7 specific eliminations. Each one a surgery on the performed self. Each one returning a piece of your energy to the only place it was ever supposed to live. Inside you, directed by you, accountable to no one but you. Think like an emperor, move like a shadow. Around 170 AD, in the middle of a Germanic military campaign, in a tent on the frozen banks of the Danube River, a man was writing. He was not writing to be understood. He was not writing to be remembered. He was not writing for his children, his generals, his historians, or his empire. He was writing to himself, in Greek, in a private journal he never named, never published, and never showed to a single person in his lifetime. What he was doing, what he was really doing, was transforming in secret. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He had access to every form of external validation the ancient world could offer. Senators competed for proximity to him. Philosophers dedicated entire works to his name. His image appeared on the currency of 40 million people. If any man in history had earned the right to announce his growth, to perform his philosophy, to post about his morning routine, it was him. He chose silence instead, not because he was modest, because he understood something precise about the relationship between attention and transformation. The moment you turn your process into a performance, you have changed its nature. What was private work, difficult, unglamorous, honest, becomes public theater. And theater requires an audience. And audiences have opinions. And opinions require management. And suddenly the transformation is not about becoming who you decided to be. It is about managing how you appear to people while appearing to become who you decided to be. These are not the same thing. And the Stoics were ruthless about the distinction. The meditations survived because a secretary found them after Marcus died. They were never meant for us. They were private maintenance records. A man holding himself accountable with no gallery watching and no applause available. That is the architecture we are building today. Elimination 1. The people who only appear when they need something. There is a specific kind of relationship that most men maintain far longer than its evidence warrants. The person who reaches out only when they need advice, support, money, introductions, or emotional labor. Who goes silent the moment the need is met? Who is unavailable in your difficulty and present in your success only insofar as your success has something to offer them? You know this person. You have probably known several of them. And there is an excellent chance that you are still giving them access to your time, your attention, and your energy. Not because the relationship merits it, but because ending it would require an explanation you have not yet decided to give. Here is the Stoic instruction. No explanation is required. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is mutual. The key word is mutual. The relationship where all improvement moves in one direction is not a relationship. It is a resource extraction. And the man who does not recognize this has confused loyalty with exploitation. The elimination is not a confrontation. It is not a speech. It is not a message that begins with, "I've been thinking." It is simply the quiet withdrawal of access. You stop making yourself available. You stop responding immediately. You stop being the solution to problems you did not create. Not with hostility, not with drama, with the calm, unannounced redirection of your energy toward the places where it actually compounds. Marcus Aurelius, managing an empire that demanded his time from every direction, wrote this: "Confine yourself to the present." The present showed him who was actually there, and who was only there when they needed something. The present will show you the same thing. Cut the access. No announcement necessary. Watch what happens to the relationship when the resource is no longer freely available. What remains is real. What disappears confirmed what you already knew. Elimination. 2. The reflex to explain your decisions. You made a decision. It is your decision. It affects your life. And before you have even acted on it, you are already composing the explanation, running through the justification, anticipating the objections, preparing the defense of a choice that has not yet been questioned. That reflex is not thoughtfulness. It is a submission to an imaginary court. Every time you explain a decision that was not asked about, you communicate one thing precisely. Your decisions require external validation to feel legitimate. You are not confident the choice is correct unless someone else confirms it. And that confirmation, that nod, that makes sense, that "yeah, I get it," has become a requirement you cannot function without. Epictetus said it directly: "Never explain yourself to anyone. Your friends do not need it, and your enemies will not believe it anyway." This is not cynicism. It is an accurate map of how explanations actually function in the world. The people who already trust your judgment will support your decision without the explanation. The people who don't trust your judgment will find the explanation insufficient, regardless of its quality. You are performing for an audience that is neither persuaded nor moved. The elimination is this: make the decision, act on it, say nothing about it until the results speak. This is one of the most difficult disciplines in this entire video, because the explanation reflex is deeply conditioned. It was installed by years of being required to justify yourself to parents, teachers, institutions, and relationships that demanded access to your reasoning as a condition of their approval. And somewhere in that conditioning, you began to believe that unexplained decisions are somehow suspect. They are not. They are sovereign. The man who acts without preamble, who moves without narration, who decides without committee, that man is not hiding. He is operating at a level of self-trust that does not require external confirmation at every step. Silence on your decisions is not secrecy. It is authority. Authority that you cannot manufacture with words, only with action that needs no preface. Elimination. 3. Consumption that you use as an identity. There is a version of the problem that is obvious: the endless scrolling, the shows watched out of boredom, the noise used to fill the silence that would otherwise reveal what you are avoiding. There is a version that is harder to see: the podcast you listen to every day, not because it changes how you act, but because it makes you feel like someone who thinks about serious things. The books you buy and display but do not finish. The content you consume about the life you intend to build, rather than actually building it. The philosophical videos you watch, perhaps this one, that feel like productive time but produce no behavioral change. This is consumption as identity management. The content is not changing you. It is giving you the feeling of changing without the cost of actually doing so. And that feeling, like the feeling from the announcement, is a substitute for the real thing. The Stoics were specific and almost harsh about this. Epictetus said, "It is impossible to learn that which you think you already know." The man who is constantly consuming content about discipline has installed the belief that he already understands discipline. The understanding has become the substitute for the practice. He is full. He cannot receive the actual instruction because he is already certain he has it. The elimination here is not to stop consuming everything. It is to impose a simple, brutal filter. Has this changed what I do? Not what I think. Not what I understand. What I do. If the answer is no, the consumption is performing the function of the announcement. It is a dopamine reward for intellectual engagement with an idea, rather than actual application of it. Replace it with nothing first. Let the silence that emerges from the removal feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is not emptiness. It is space. The specific space where actual thought, actual self-examination, and actual behavioral change are the only available responses to the quiet. Marcus did not consume philosophy. He practiced it. Every morning. Alone. In a tent. Before anyone was watching. There is no record of him listening to someone explain Stoicism to him. There is only evidence of him applying it relentlessly, in the most difficult conditions any philosopher has ever faced. The distinction between consuming a philosophy and living one is the entire distance between who you are right now and who you have decided to become. Elimination 4. The version of yourself that was built to please others. This one is the deepest cut. At some point in your development, early, before you had the language or the awareness to resist it, you began constructing a version of yourself that was designed to produce approval. You learned what made people comfortable, and you performed it. You learned what made them uneasy, and you suppressed it. You adjusted, over years, your presentation of yourself to optimize for reception. That optimization produced a person. But it was not you. It was you as seen through the lens of everyone else's preferences, fears, and conditioning. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we construct to manage how the world receives us. He was not the first. The Stoics identified it 2,000 years before Jung had the vocabulary. Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be. Then do what you have to do. The first instruction is the radical one. Not what would be acceptable. Not what would be approved. What would you be? If the answer depends on who is in the room, you have not yet answered it. The elimination of the performed self is not a dramatic public announcement of authenticity. It is not a post about your journey. It is not a conversation where you tell people you are changing. It is quieter and more difficult than any of those things. It is the moment when you are about to perform the familiar gesture, the agreement you don't mean, the laugh at the thing that wasn't funny, the self-diminishment that makes the other person more comfortable, the opinion you suppress because you already know it will be unwelcome. And instead of performing it, you simply do not. You stay still. You let the silence sit. You allow the discomfort of not managing the other person's reception. The first time you do this, it will feel dangerous, because the persona was constructed partly as protection. The person who never disagrees is never rejected for their disagreement. The person who is always agreeable is never abandoned for being difficult. The performed self was a survival strategy, however unconscious. What you are building in its place is not a new performance. It is the actual thing, not built for approval, not adjusted for reception, tested only against the question Marcus asked every morning. Is this consistent with who I have decided to be? Build something real instead, quietly, without announcement, without seeking a single confirmation that the new construction is acceptable to anyone but you. Elimination 5. The public timeline. This is the mechanism beneath the announcement problem that nobody names precisely enough. When you attach a public timeline to a private transformation, I'm starting Monday. By the end of the year, I've decided that from now on, you do two things simultaneously. You create an audience for your process, and you create the possibility of public failure. Both of those things are catastrophic to genuine change. The audience means that the transformation is no longer purely internal. Every action now has a second function, managing how it appears to the people who know about the timeline. The early morning run is not just a run, it is evidence. The journal entry is not just reflection, it is documentation. The decision you are making is not just a decision, it is content for the narrative you told people you were living. And the possibility of public failure means that the moment the timeline slips, the Monday that doesn't happen, the end of year that arrives without the transformation, you have not merely missed your target, you have done so in front of witnesses, and the shame of that is often enough to make the man abandon the goal entirely, rather than continue toward it without the original timeline, and without the dignity of the original announcement. Seneca wrote, "Retire into yourself as much as you can, not as withdrawal from the world, as protection of the process from the world's interference." The process of transformation is fragile in its early stages,
exactly as fragile as a seed in the ground that cannot survive being constantly dug up to check its progress. The public timeline buries the seed and then digs it up every week for an inspection. The elimination is the removal of all external accountability structures for private internal work. Not because accountability is bad, because external accountability for internal transformation produces performance rather than change. The only accountability that matters for the work we are discussing in this video is your accountability to yourself, to the identity you declared, to the standard you chose, to the man you decided to be before anyone was watching. No timeline, no announcement, no updates, just the work, done in silence, accumulating without an audience, until the results appear in your life like a fact rather than a claim. Elimination. 6. The conversations that cost more than they return. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors." He did not write this to be antisocial. He wrote it because he had done an honest calculation and arrived at a result that most men refuse to acknowledge. Most conversations are not investments. They are expenditures. The gossip conversation, where you discuss what someone is doing and what it might mean, and what they probably intended, costs you time, attention, and the particular energy that comes from engaging your mind with things that produce no result. The complaint conversation, where someone recounts what is wrong without any genuine intention to change it, costs you the equivalent of absorbing someone else's problem without receiving anything that improves your capacity to handle your own. The argument about things that will not matter in 5 years. Who said what? Who was wrong? Who deserves acknowledgement? Costs you the energy that could have gone toward building something that will matter in 50. These conversations are not evil. They are simply expensive in the currency that matters most: your attention. And attention, as the Stoics understood with a precision that modern neuroscience has since confirmed, is not a renewable resource in the same way that time is. Time you can get more of tomorrow. The attention required to do deep work, to make clear decisions, to examine yourself honestly, that depletes. And it does not fully replenish between a gossip session at 10 p.m. and your morning at 5 a.m. The elimination is not rudeness. It is the quiet redirection of where you invest your most valuable cognitive resource. You are not available for conversations that produce nothing. Not announced, not explained, simply not available. And in the space that creates, something specific happens. The people who remain in your life are the people who are there for the actual exchange. The conversation that sharpens you, that challenges you honestly, that offers something your thinking was missing. Those conversations exist. They are rare. They are worth protecting precisely by eliminating everything around them that dilutes the standard. Elimination. 7. The need for the transformation to be witnessed. This is the deepest one, and it is the one that nobody in this genre of content has the courage to name correctly. Most men who are working on themselves are not working on themselves. They are working on the presentation of a man who is working on himself. The
distinction is almost invisible from the outside, and from the inside, it requires a level of honest self-examination that most people will not do because the answer is uncomfortable. Ask yourself, if no one would ever know you had done this work, if the journal entries stayed private forever, if the early mornings were never mentioned, if the discipline produced results that you could never publicly attribute to your process, would you still do it? If the honest answer has any hesitation in it, you have found the thing. The need for the transformation to be witnessed is the need for external validation dressed in philosophical clothing. It says, I am doing this because I have decided to become a specific person. But underneath it says, and I need you to see me doing it, to confirm that I am someone who does this kind of thing, to reflect back to me the identity I am trying to construct. Marcus Aurelius wrote his most honest lines in a journal he never shared. His most rigorous self-examinations are full of humility and self-correction that would have been devastating to his public authority. He wrote things about himself that emperors do not put on record. Because the work was not for the record. The work was for him. That is the model, not the performance of philosophical self-improvement. The actual practice of it, alone, in the dark, without an audience, without documentation designed for sharing, without the ambient awareness that someone might one day read this and think well of you for it. The moment the transformation no longer needs to be witnessed, the moment you are building for no reason except the person you have decided to be, that is the moment it becomes real. That is the moment it becomes permanent. That is the moment it accelerates. Here is what these 7 eliminations have in common. And this is the thing nobody says clearly enough. They are all forms of the same surgery. They all cut the connection between your internal process and external reception. They all return your energy from the management of appearances to the building of realities. And they all operate on the same mechanism. The less your transformation depends on being seen, the faster it goes. The less it depends on being approved, the more authentically it builds. The less it needs an audience, the more sovereign it becomes. There is a psychological term for what happens when this surgery is complete. Epictetus used a different word for it. Marcus Aurelius lived it without naming it. Carl Jung spent his career mapping its architecture. It is called individuation. The process of becoming, finally and fully, the person you actually are, rather than the person constructed by years of managing external reception. Jung was clear about one thing: individuation is inherently, necessarily, structurally a private process. It cannot be done in public. Not because privacy is a requirement, but because the self being built in individuation is the self beneath the persona, and the persona, by definition, cannot participate in the dismantling of itself. The silence is not strategy in the tactical sense. It is the necessary condition for the work to happen at all. Here is the practice. Not eventually. Starting tonight, pick one of the 7 eliminations, the one that names the gap most precisely, and act on it once before the week ends. Not all 7. 1. The surgery does not need to be announced. It does not need to be logged. It does not need to be visible to anyone. It needs only to happen. The man you are building does not need permission, does not need applause, and does not need confirmation that the building is acceptable. He is being built in the silence, in the discipline, in the accumulation of daily decisions that nobody witnesses and nobody validates. And he will be the most real thing you have ever built, because he is the only version of you that was built without the scaffolding of someone else's approval holding him up. By the way, before the close, I want to give you something. Everything in this video goes far deeper in a book I wrote called The Inner Sanctum. It contains the sacred Stoic teachings on self-mastery, psychological sovereignty, and the architecture of the unbreakable mind that most people never reach. The full system, not the surface. If what you are hearing right now is resonating, that book was written for exactly where you are. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below.
Now let's close. The man in the original short version of this idea said something precise. Silence isn't secrecy. It's strategy. He was right. But it goes further than strategy. Silence is the specific environment in which real transformation is possible. Not because secrecy protects it, because the absence of an audience removes the second motive. And when the second motive, the need to be seen changing, is removed, only the first motive remains, becoming who you decided to be. That is the whole project. It does not require an audience. It does not require a timeline posted anywhere. It does not require the approval of anyone who has not earned the right to assess your direction. The 7 things you are eliminating are not obstacles. They were never obstacles. They were substitutes. Comfortable, socially rewarded substitutes for the actual work of becoming a person who is governed only from within. Marcus Aurelius eliminated the need to be seen doing the work. He did the work. For 20 years. In private. Under conditions that would have justified every excuse a man has ever made for not doing the work. And what he built, the character visible in every line of that private journal, is still being discussed 2,000 years later. Not because he announced it, because it was real. Go build something real. Think like an emperor. Move like a shadow. Tell me in the comments, which of these 7 eliminations is the one you have been avoiding? Not the easiest one to admit. The actual one. The one that just names something you already knew but haven't acted on. Drop it below. I read every single one.